I think it's good that people are investing money in developing new ways of getting into space. I think that's a very positive thing. Particularly, SpaceX has done some extraordinary stuff, and you see a lot of the headlines with Starship and things like that. But behind all that, they've basically created a rocket system that's lowered the price of getting into space by about 10 times. Yeah, if you people usually sort of talk about how much it costs to get up there in pounds or dollars per kilogram. And I don't actually know what the numbers are precisely, but it's now 10 times, the cost is a tenth of what it was before Starlink came into existence. And that means that the benefits of access to space, particularly around things like communications, studying the Earth, weather forecasting, monitoring pollution, watching out for fires and deforestation, all of the massive things that we get from having satellites up in space looking at the Earth. We can do more of that, and it costs us less, and that's only a good thing. I think Bezos is, I would say, a bit behind the game, and I'm not quite sure why, because they started out at a similar kind of time. But I think yeah, I guess Musk has taken more risks in getting to where Starlink has got to. And okay, it's headlined by people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, but actually what they've done is hire a lot of really smart people who know what they're doing. Um, and it's more a question of how they manage and organize those people. I don't think Elon Musk has any more technical skills than Jeff Bezos, but he's really set out a really good dynamic direction for his company. Starship hasn't yet made it into orbit. Starship is actually bigger. Um, so there's an element of competition there about, how big a rocket do you really need? And the concept of Starship is somewhat different. It's more, I would say, a more flexible opportunity. It's got, different kind of process for getting back to the Earth from space. Whereas the Blue Origin one is a kind of more traditional heat shield approach, with just the capsule coming back. So there are swings and roundabouts here. They'll do different things ultimately. I don't think it's a problem really that Blue Origin has got to where it is. What you need to remember is that the Falcon series actually do put people into space. They've been carrying passengers to the space station for a long time now. So Elon already has his sort of how do I get people up and down challenge solved. But I think competition is a good thing. I think having Blue Origin and Bezos doing something different has got to be good, because you don't want a monopoly. Monopolies, in the end, they work against doing things at low cost. They work against sort of novelty, if they're allowed to go on. So I see this as really quite a positive development.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
And Elon Musk has certainly made no secret of the fact that his ambition is to go to Mars. Having the backing of the president is a good thing, because it means that what goes on in NASA will become aligned with that. However, it already was really, but just not in such a public way. I mean, the NASA's return to the moon program is part of a longer term ambition for going to Mars. But there are I think the question I would ask is whether or not this relationship will trample on some of the things that those of us in the science community, exploration community, feel should be done first. We're still trying to find out whether there is actually life on Mars. And that's a very sensitive experiment, because what you can't afford to do is carry life from the Earth to Mars before you actually really understand what's going on Mars. And I think there's a risk that a rush to Mars will have boots trampling all over the place, and we may then never understand whether life got going on Mars on its own. Uh, so there's a risk there. Uh, so my personal feeling, and the feeling is that you shouldn't really be landing on Mars until you actually know more about Mars. Uh, on the other aspects of going to Mars is that it sounds great. You know, you look at these big rockets and you can kind of see, yeah, we're about in a position to do it. But there are a lot more challenges that haven't been solved that have to be solved before going to Mars becomes realistic. Uh, yeah, I'm sure you watch science fiction films like I do, and yeah, we feel quite comfortable with the idea of a big starship and people living normal lives. It's not going to be like that because these rockets on that scale are very small, uh, only carry a few people, and it'd be like living in a three-person tent uh, with two people you might love or hate for 2 years at least. And you won't really be able to go out. You might be able to go out on the odd spacewalk, or you might be able to go out on the odd walk on the surface, but Mars is pretty much just as bad as the moon. It's got a bit of atmosphere, but not enough to make it a more pleasant place to be. It's like these places are always trying to kill you. Um, there is no nice place on Mars to go to explore. So it's going to be a tough thing for humans to do. One of the problems on long journeys, particularly going to Mars, is radiation from the sun. There's no protection from it on the journey. We don't really know how to protect astronauts that are traveling for several months between the Earth and Mars from solar radiation. I don't know if you were lucky enough, like I was, to see the aurora, those big solar storms. Well, if one of those came past you, you would be dead. Uh, at very least, very, very ill. Uh, and in a spacecraft over the course of a 7-month period, the chances are quite high of being exposed to that. And even when you get there, you've got to find a way of burrowing down under the surface. The only way of protecting yourself on the surface really is just to pile up sort of rock and debris over the whatever base you install there. And the NASA Artemis program, which is closely linked to what they're doing, and it's not like NASA works in its own sort of bubble, because they pay these companies to do quite a lot of the work. Uh, you know, Musk and Bezos, it's not just private enterprise. Obviously, they are putting private money into it, but one of the reasons they've made the economics work is that they've had a lot of contracts from the US government through NASA as a kind of, you know, basic stakeholder in the process that's enabled it all to happen. So it's been already quite a close working relationship. So yeah, I'm sure that intent is there, and the moon's closer, 3 days away. It's a less serious problem from the point of view of survival, and definitely you need to be able to do that before you can think about going to Mars. What you're seeing happen with the SpaceX capture of the booster is a step from what they already do with the Falcon. So it's not like they've just decided we're going to do this. It's reusability is baked into what not Starlink, SpaceX are doing. And that's the big innovation, really. It's starting at the very beginning saying, we're not going to throw this stuff away. We're going to find ways to reuse it, and we're going to develop the technologies, and we're going to develop the techniques and the processes. So from the beginning, it's a big challenge, but the challenge of capturing the booster uh, for the Starship is not a big step from what they already do. It's a bigger booster, and so you need a sort of a bigger sort of space to catch it in, and you need more engineering to do it. But it is only engineering. Then I've always been impressed with what goes on in the US space-wise. I mean, NASA is the biggest space research organization on the planet, and we have ESA, which actually allows us to work on a similar scale, even though we're a small country, by essentially sharing the club. And it is very much an international endeavor. I think the challenges are that the technology is impressive, and the intention is welcome, uh, but also there are challenges that are not really being addressed by these people, and that's about sustainability in space. The more stuff you put up there, the more you increase the risk of collisions from space debris, and the risk of those collisions essentially running away exponentially, which might make low Earth orbit inaccessible. And I don't see enough attention being paid to that by Bezos and Musk's activities. So they're looking at the sharp end technology, and they can definitely put the constellations up there, and they can definitely do the broadband, which obviously will have an enormous impact on society around the world. Problem then is that what do you do with all that stuff in space is not really well thought out. Uh, if you only have one of these things, it might be okay, but now we've got 2, 3 other countries, Russia, China, doing this, and we got 5 or 6 of these things being put up there, and so the numbers start to look a little bit frightening. So I think it's good, but we just need to be careful um, about what we do to the environment out there. You might feel that space is big and we can't really pollute it, but at the scale that people are now beginning to operate, we certainly can, and we need to try to avoid it. And I'm not convinced that SpaceX really worries enough about that in the way that they approach their rocket development, because they're quite happy to have that massive rocket crash. They'll learn a lot from it happening, and they don't want it to crash because they want it to work. But yeah, you crash that down into the sort of ocean nearby the launch site. That's an awful lot of debris and pollution and damage to the environment. So I think there are tensions between, you know, what you can do and maybe what you should do that could build up over the next few years.